Chapter 1. Ashmere, Maine. Ashmere was the kind of place that smelled like salt, chimney smoke, and secrets. Built along the jagged Maine coast, it was a town of gray skies, colder hearts, and stories that grew like mold between the walls of century-old homes. And none of those homes were more talked about or more feared than the Whitlock place. It sat at the edge of town, past the docks, past the graveyard, just before the forest turned wild. It wasn't just old, it was untouched, untamed. A large white house with black shutters and a widow's walk that faced the sea, like it was waiting for someone who'd never come home. The shutters never moved, the curtains never opened, but the attic window sometimes glowed, even though no oil lamp had been sold to that address in decades. The children in town would dare each other to run up and touch the iron gate. The braver ones swore they heard things when they did, crying, music, a name whispered just behind their shoulder. But none of them stayed long, not even the drunkards, especially not them. And the adults, they kept their heads down. They didn't speak her name in daylight, and never, ever after sundown, but her name was carved into church ledgers and stitched into dozens of birth cloths and whispered behind closed doors whenever a baby didn't cry after birth. Esther Whitlock, midwife, widow, and some believed a woman who had seen too much death to walk fully in life. The local paper, the Ashmere Ledger, once ran a piece about her in 1871, called her the miracle nurse of the North Coast, said she had saved more mothers and infants than the town doctor. But a year later, that doctor, her husband, disappeared, and from then on, the Whitlock home went silent. No more patients, no more visits, only darkness behind the windows and whispers beneath them. Some said she'd gone mad, others that she'd made a deal with something older than medicine. They said Esther Whitlock had hands like silk, really knew what happened, and eyes that never blinked when things went wrong. Not until she came from the highlands of northern Vermont, daughter of a textile merchant, trained as a midwife by her grandmother. A woman whispered to be touched by the veil. Esther moved to Ashmere in 1867, newly married to Dr. Elias Whitlock, the town's only physician. They were a handsome pair, the doctor with his fine coat and straight teeth, and Esther, pale and quiet, always carrying a black satchel and a silver crucifix tucked under her collar. Together they brought over 40 children into the world. But after the first frost of 1872, everything changed. Dr. Whitlock left the house one morning, said he was headed to visit a sick fisherman near the harbor. He never came back. The tides were searched, the forest scoured. Not a single trace, his boots, his hat, even his horse, gone. Some said he ran, some said he drowned, some believed Esther buried him beneath the floorboards, but no charges were ever brought, and no body ever found. Esther didn't mourn like other widows. She wore black, yes, but she never cried, not in public, not even at church. She stopped attending Mass altogether after his disappearance, locked the clinic, boarded up the nursery, and spoke to no one, except the crows on her porch rail and the stray cats that waited for her window light to flicker on each evening. Her garden died, the shutters rotted, but the attic window remained, always shut, always watching. The townsfolk tried to be kind at first, brought bread, left candles, even sent the constable around to check on her, but she never answered the door. Instead, they'd find small thank you notes tucked under their porch rocks. Perfect handwriting. No signature. Just one line. They sleep better when it's quiet. No one knew what that meant, and no one wanted to ask. The children, though, they knew something wasn't right. One boy, Peter Gannon, said he saw her standing in the attic window one night, whispering to something in her arms, rocking back and forth. Back and forth. When he looked again, she was gone. But the rocking didn't stop. Peter never went near the house again. Neither did the mailman, after he heard humming coming from the chimney, like a lullaby with no words, drifting up from beneath the floor. And still, the attic window remained, unopened, but never quite empty. Sometimes a flicker, sometimes a shadow. Once, the shape of a cradle. They say Esther had no children, no family,
Chapter
no
3.
visitors.
It
But
started with a
someone
call to the
or something
constable.
was
A
in that
report
attic
from
with
the
her.
neighbors next door,
And in the
the
spring of
Crowleys,
1892,
who lived in the house closest to the
voices
Whitlock
started.
property.
Faint,
Mrs. Crowley
soft,
had been baking late
but
one evening
unmistakably
and heard
young.
what she described as soft thudding, like small feet running across the attic floor. At first, she thought it was an animal, a raccoon maybe, or squirrels in the walls. But then she heard giggling, faint, childlike, and distinctly human. Her husband went out with a lantern, walked the perimeter, called out to Esther, who hadn't been seen in weeks. No answer, just the sound of something rocking back and forth, back and forth. Above them, they called the sheriff. When he arrived, the front door was locked, the windows nailed shut, but the attic window was glowing, pale orange, like candlelight behind stained glass. They broke the door, and just past midnight, what they found was not what they expected. The house smelled like lavender water and mold. Everything was coated in dust, but undisturbed, frozen in time. The table was set in the dining room. 2 plates, 2 teacups, as if someone were still waiting for their husband to come home for supper. A faint music box melody played in the distance, but they couldn't find the source. The walls were lined with dozens of framed photographs, all turned backward. They moved slowly, room by room, until they reached the stairs, and that's when they saw it, the attic door. It was nailed shut with rusted iron spikes, crude, panicked, like someone had been trying to keep something in, not out. They pried it open. The wood groaned, the hinges screamed, and a wave of cold air rushed down the stairs like a breath held too long. Inside, there were 13 cradles, handmade, rocking gently on their own, each one wrapped in thin white linen, and inside a wax doll, perfectly molded, delicately dressed, each bearing a name stitched onto the cloth in fine red thread. Ada, Marion, Elsie, Ruth, James, Owen, names that had been forgotten by time, and a few remembered from birth records that ended in tragedy. The sheriff recognized one instantly, Lillian May Hopkins, born 1875, stillborn, delivered by Esther Whitlock. He checked another, and another, all the same, all infants that never made it past a single breath, or none at all. But here, in this attic, they were preserved, honored, named, rocked by invisible hands. And at the far end of the attic, in a carved wooden rocking chair, sat Esther, still, peaceful, eyes closed. Her lips were curled in the faintest smile, as if she had finally found sleep after years of waiting. In her lap, a silver music box, still turning, though no one had wound it. The lullaby, the same one heard through the chimney, played softly, fading, slowing, but never stopping. A journal lay beside her feet, the pages,
Chapter 4.
brittle,
The Music Box.
stained with salt.
Never
The
stopped
last entry
playing.
read,
Even after they removed the
weren't
key.
lost, they were
Even after
taken
they opened it and
too
found
soon.
nothing inside.
But he promised me
No gears, no
I
spring.
could hold them a little longer,
Just an empty silver
And so
shell
I
with a
did,
velvet lining,
until they learned to
cold
rock
to the
themselves.
touch. But when you closed it, it played the same tune over and over. A slow, sorrowful lullaby that no one could name, but everyone swore they'd heard before, somewhere deep in childhood, in fever dreams, or night terrors they could never quite explain. The constable asked one of the older parish women if she recognized it. She turned pale, crossed herself, and whispered, "It's the tune they played at the Whitlock stillbirths all those years ago. They buried Esther in the church cemetery, in a plot that hadn't been touched in decades. No family claimed her. No relatives came. Only the sheriff and the priest and one trembling midwife who remembered Esther's kindness when her own child was born blue and breathing. But when they lowered her coffin into the ground, the music box began to play again. No one had touched it. It had been sealed in the evidence room, behind 3 locks, beneath 2 cloths, and still. The lullaby drifted out from under the priest's robes like incense. The grave diggers refused to fill the hole until it stopped. It didn't, so they threw the dirt in anyway, as the tune slowed and twisted until the final note bent itself backward, like a cry caught mid-breath. The Whitlock house was boarded up, condemned, declared unsafe, but the town council didn't dare tear it down. A contractor was hired once, paid up front, promised to level the property in a single day. He never showed. Weeks later, they found his truck, abandoned, halfway into the woods behind the property line. Inside, his tools, his coat, his clipboard, pinned to the passenger seat, a child's drawing, crayon on yellow paper, 13 cradles, 1 attic window, and in the center, a woman with black eyes and stitched lips, holding something too small, too heavy, too still. The music box was eventually lost, or so the official report claimed. Some say that the sheriff buried it beneath his barn. Others, that it was returned to the attic, sealed with salt and nails. But the song kept going. Some nights, especially when the tide is low and the fog curls just right. The wind carries it through Ashmere, software like breath on glass, a melody with no voice, but hundreds of ears. They say if you follow it, if you let it lead you past the church, through the woods, and to where the old Whitlock foundation crumbles in the moss, you'll find 13 cradles, empty, but rocking, back and forth.
Chapter 5.
Back.
They tried to forget her. Ashmere scrubbed her name from birth ledgers.
You might hear her
removed
voice
her
again,
image from the old parish
not
records.
crying,
Even
not
burned the
calling,
chair she
just
died
whispering.
thinking that fire could cleanse what rot had taken root.
They're still asleep.
But the town never healed. Not really. That spring, 3 stillbirths occurred in the same week, all delivered by different hands. All born, waxy, silent, with crimson threads stitched through their swaddling cloths. No one could explain it. The mothers had been healthy, the pregnancies uneventful, and yet, when the last child was placed in the priest's arms for blessing, he recoiled, said that the baby smelled like lavender and iron, said he heard music. They excommunicated him the next day. He never spoke again. The house itself fell, eventually. A fire. No lightning, no storm. Just a red flicker one night. And by morning, all that remained was the charred foundation and the twisted silhouette of what had once been the attic window. Still blackened, still upright. But even now, nothing grows there. No moss, no wildflowers, not even weeds. Just a square of dead earth and the faintest outline of where 13 cradles had once rested, quiet and swaying. Children avoid that part of town, even those born long after Esther's death. They say something pulls at them when they pass, a coldness behind the teeth, a weight on the chest. And once, one girl claimed her pocket filled with dust, and a piece of red thread knotted like a name. People ask why the story lingers, why it's told in hushed voices at school camps, why visitors are warned to stay on the lit streets, why the church bell never rings at midnight, even on Christmas Eve. But in Ashmere, some stories don't end. They sleep and wait and watch, and sometimes they sing. Soft lullabies from chimneys that no longer stand, from windows that no longer exist, from the memories of babies who never took their first breath, but never stopped breathing. No one knows who or what Esther was speaking to in that attic. No one knows what made the cradles rock, or how the music box played without a key, without a mechanism, without permission. But everyone in Ashmere knows, deep down, without needing to say it. She wasn't alone. Not in life, not in death, not in that attic. And maybe, just maybe, she never meant
Epilogue.
harm.
Sometimes
Maybe she just wanted more time.
when the fog is
to
thick
hold
and the
them,
tide is
to
low,
hush them,
people still
to keep
hear
them
it.
safe.
The
in a
lullaby,
place where they could
it doesn't
never
come
be
from
taken
a house
again.
or a
place where
porch
lullabies
or any
never
living
stop,
place.
and silence
It comes
is
from the earth
sacred.
itself, from beneath the moss, from the bones of a place too quiet for too long. Hikers say they've seen shadows move near the old foundation. No animals, no people, just small shifting figures, rocking, waiting, watching. One woman said she saw a cradle not old, not broken, but freshly built, pale wood, red thread, empty, but rocking as if someone had just stepped away. And in the local museum, a glass box sits in the back corner, unlabeled, unlit. Inside it, a silver music box, sealed shut, dusty, but warm. The museum staff say it sometimes hums, but only when no one's looking, only when the lights go out. Some nights the janitor finds little fingerprints on the inside of the glass, too small to be his, too many to count. Ashmere has learned not to speak the name anymore, not out loud, not around infants, not around strangers, but sometimes when a child wakes from a dream crying and says they saw the rocking lady again, parents just nod, hold them tight, and whisper, "She means no harm. She just doesn't know you're not hers." So the story remains, etched in wind, sung through walls, written in red thread and silence. Esther Whitlock never left, not really, and neither did they. The ones she kept, the ones she couldn't save, the ones who rock themselves now, in the dark, waiting for the song to start again. If they never lived, who keeps singing them to sleep?